of women from South Sudan. As the youngest country in the world, we know that the hopes and the expectations of the South Sudanese people have been resting on the shoulders of women leaders from across the country. And year after year, crisis after crisis, we know that it's the women of South Sudan who are talking about peace and pushing for peace in their communities. So it's very exciting to be here with all of you today, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion. So we are very happy to be hosted by our friends and supporters, the Canadian mission to the UN. So our first speaker to give us a welcoming is Mr. Bob Rae, His Excellency, the Ambassador, the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations. Ambassador, over to you.
I have the chance to speak to you from up here. Thank you so much, Sarah, for introducing me, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. This is a very important gathering, and I especially want to send out a signal to those of you who are in South Sudan to joining us here today. This is not in my text, but I just want to say something to all of you, Madam Minister and colleagues who are here. It is so important for us to continue to work as hard as we can in the cause of peace and reconciliation in South Sudan. I had the opportunity 20 years ago to be co-chairing a conference in Brussels on federalism, where a speaker came to us and moved everyone who heard him speak. And that was Mr. Garang, who was a model of leadership, in my view. And his speech was one that I don't think any one of us who heard it will ever forget. And his message was very simple. His message was that as important as it is to be true to our own roots and our own faith, it is important to understand that others are doing the same, and that there has to be a process of reconciling and understanding the values of freedom, pluralism, the rule of law, and of how critically important those values are in today's world. I think all of us who heard him knew that we were in the presence of greatness. And I said to my good friend, later now the SRSG in South Sudan, Fink Haysom, I said, we really are in the presence of a very great man. And so that has always affected the way in which I've been able to follow over many years in different roles, the evolution of life in South Sudan. And we all know how difficult it is. And it is my pleasure to welcome you here today at an event that is exceptionally important, because it speaks to the challenges and opportunities for women and girls in what is called post-conflict South Sudan. But we all know in our hearts it's not yet post-conflict, that there is still a lot of conflict and the potential for conflict. And we know who pays the price for that conflict more than anyone else. It's girls and it's women. And we have to be clear about that. And while this is what we call in the UN system a side event, this is not a side event. This is the main event. This is the main event because the need for us to preserve peace and to restore it and to deal with the nature of the conflict that exists is truly critical. We are very happy that we can be joined today by two dynamic South Sudanese cabinet members, the Honorable Elizabeth Achan Oguaro, and Honorable Minister Warile. I'm really pleased that they're with us and able to join us today. It's very important to us. We have been very closely following the situation of women peacebuilders in South Sudan, where we are, in fact, as a country, supporting local organizations in advocating for peace and for inclusion. And we know that two things go together, that where there are women-led peace efforts, there is a better chance of peace happening. And where women are not given the opportunity to be included, there is a much smaller chance of peace happening. This is not about ideology. This is about what works and what is needed for us to make the progress that we want to. This is part of what in Canada we call our feminist international assistance policy. And again, the feminist international assistance policy is not some kind of ideological construct. It's a very practical response to the needs of the world. In our experience, women's rights organizations are an essential and very vibrant part of every society. The lack of support and the backlash against them has the serious repercussions for the health of what we call civic space, the space where we feel comfortable dealing with each other and making good progress. And so we feel that the community as a whole has a responsibility to support and to engage and to protect these important organizations. Despite the barriers that we all know about, it's very clear that we're making good progress. But as SRSG Haysom has said, the next 12 months is going to be critical for South Sudan's peace process. And I think as we follow the news literally every day in the past 2 weeks, we have understood just how critically important it is for us to understand how the voice of peace has to be given a place at the center of the table. And that's why it's so important for us to listen to what people are going to be telling us today. We're going to continue to support the essential work being done by South Sudanese women peacebuilders, and we're going to continue to advocate for inclusion. In January 2023, we were honored to assume the role of the co-chair of the Women, Peace and Security Working Group in South Sudan, serving alongside Norway with the support of the UN Women's South Sudan Office as facilitator. On International Women's Day, the working group issued a joint statement, which many of you will know about, calling for a South Sudan in which the rights of all women and all girls are secure and where women can participate safely and meaningfully in decision-making processes at all levels. And we are continuing to do this through our Peace Ops plan, which is a shorthand for the work that we're trying to do around the world in advancing the work of we're doing on women, peace, and security. In addition, I want to point out that it's not just about women, it's about youth. It's about young men who we need to bring into the conversation. It's about the people that we have to work with to make sure that hate does not take over, that impulse does not take over, and that everyone understands that bad actions have the worst of consequences. And so it's so important that consequential thinking become a major part of our effort in getting people to understand how there needs to be a stronger, deeper, more profound commitment to peace and to reconciliation. I want to congratulate the organizers of this event. We have a good number of people here in the room, but we also have a good number of people who are watching and listening in from all over. And that is wonderful, and I think important as we try to go forward. So I look forward very much to hearing the program today, and want to thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words and let you know how welcome you are in this mission, and how honored Canada is to be able to chair this, sponsor this event, and we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you very, very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for those remarks and for setting the stage with the vision of His Excellency, the late Mr. Goreng, because the unity and ideals that were embodied in his thought also extended to gender equality. And we know that he was a big champion and supporter of South Sudanese women. So thank you for that. And of course, thank you for Canada's leadership in the Feminist International Assistance Policy, also as the chair of the group of Friends of 1325 here in New York. So it's great to be amongst our wonderful friends from the Canadian Mission. So our next speaker, unfortunately, was not able to join us at the last minute, who is Ms. Åsa Regner, but she has sent an excellent replacement in her stead, who is our Chief of Peace, Security, and Resilience, Päivi Kanisto, to say a few remarks on behalf of UN Women.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and wonderful to see you all here. Unfortunately, indeed, our UN Women's Deputy Executive Director, Åsa Regner, couldn't make it here, and she was very sorry about that and very sad she couldn't come, as she was really looking forward to this event. However, I'm the lucky one and very honored one to be here with you today. And I'm honored to be here with Honorable Minister Varile, Honorable Marilu McFadden, Honorable Petio Guaro, Ms. Mavic Cabrera Balesa, distinguished members of the panel, distinguished invited guests, and I see so many wonderful people in this group. It's really an honor to be here speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm very pleased to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of our Deputy Executive Director to this event. I'm also very happy to see members of South Sudan's female leadership in government and civil society. Åsa Regner, our Deputy Executive Director, had an opportunity to meet with many of you during a solidarity visit to the country last November to re-emphasize the importance of women's empowerment, meaningful participation, leadership in the implementation of a revitalized peace agreement on the resolution on the conflict in South Sudan. The majority of women and girls lack basic digitalization skills and knowledge in mobile money operations and transfers, in online electronic banking, usage of internet technology, and computer literacy. This poses difficulties in payments or disbursements of funding, mobile money to clients, people, small and medium-sized enterprises, and village savings and loans associations across the country. For South Sudanese men and women, access to information and communication technologies, ICT, determines their access to employment and incomes. According to focus group discussions with secondary and university female students in Juba, it is difficult for one to access employment if one is computer illiterate. Digital literacy is also a big challenge for women in uniform who say that their male counterparts get promoted because they are computer literate. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with challenges come many opportunities for the government, with the support of the civil society, the private sector, and the international community to narrow the digital gender divide so that women and girls in South Sudan can better access information, including on their rights and transitional processes, mobilize and participate at political, security, and economic levels. There are opportunities to support government's efforts to develop South Sudan's ICT infrastructure, to improve rural coverage, to ensure affordable access to ICT equipment and services, to strengthen the ICT skills of women and girls, small business owners, activists, advocates, community, and political leaders. So at the end, I would like to give recommendations. Women's and girls' access to ICT was a major topic at the International Conference on Women's Transformational Leadership. Here are some key recommendations from a conference as well as other sources which the international community and other partners could support. There are 7 recommendations. 7 is a lucky number, isn't it? So let's go for it. Conduct an assessment of women's access to the internet and ICT and invest in accessible and affordable internet and mobile communication services across South Sudan, especially rural areas, including through public-private partnerships. Lobby the government to reduce taxes on ICT equipment. This could be the best strategy to ensure affordable prices for computers and other ICT material. On a related matter, UN Women has bought computers and other ICT equipment for the leaders of a South Sudan security sector women's network. Design strategies to respond effectively to online violence against women and girls and the backlash which women, civil society organizations and activists experience, including by policy formulation, providing legal aid and other assistance. Formulate cyber policy that address online harassment, abuse and intimidation against women, civil society organizations and individual activists and human rights defenders. Develop and roll out digital literacy programs for women and girls across the country. Work to change social norms and values that limit women and girls' access to skills, education, and information to increase the ICT literacy rates of women and girls. And from our offices in Juba and Nairobi to our headquarters here, UN Women will continue to work with government, civil society organizations, and communities to improve the lives of women and girls and narrow the gender digital divide in their country, especially in the areas of women's leadership, peace and security, economic empowerment, ending violence against women. Thank you so much for listening and looking forward to hearing continued discussions in this beautiful mission and hosted by Government of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Päivi, for linking so clearly the discussion we're having today to the CSW theme. I think also your remarks underscored how the challenges are also opportunities in terms of the ability to leapfrog some stages of development when it comes to digitalization. And your 7 recommendations offer us a very clear path forward. So thank you so much for that very clear, those very clear steps. So next, it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Betty Aguero, who I think is known to many of you, the former Minister of Agriculture, sitting member of Parliament, member of the GNWP Board of Directors. She's also a founding member of the Parliamentary Women's Caucus. She's not only a peacemaker and peace builder in her own country, but was also one of the mediators for the Juba peace process that ended the devastating conflict in northern Uganda. So we're thrilled to have you here with us and offer your wisdom and insight. Betty, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I've known Sarah long way back, and I'm happy to meet her again today. Your Excellency, Bob Ray, the permanent representative, I don't know if he has gone out. Your Excellency, Aya Benjamin Warile, the Minister of Gender in the Republic of South Sudan. Mavic, I would call you Your Excellency also. She is our magic. Excellency Mavic, the CEO of GNWP, the representative of UN Women, my colleagues from South Sudan, all the participants who are here, my colleagues also from the GNWP, the employees of GNWP who are here. I would like to thank the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations for allowing this panel discussion to take place in these premises. I'm really pleased to be among you and to be talking about challenges and opportunities for women and girls in, as Sarah said, or the ambassador said, it's not really post-conflict, but in conflict, post-conflict situation in South Sudan. On my behalf, as a member of the Parliament in the Government of the Republic of South Sudan, and as a member of the board of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders, I would also like to underline and salute the work of our sister organization in South Sudan, which is EVE Organization for Women Development, for the continuous work that they make and bring women forth and forward. I would like to express my concerns also about the slow progress we are making, but also progress we are making. Today, we are talking about digitalization and the advantage it has in gender equality. I think UN Women has already said in South Sudan, it is really very difficult at the moment because as a whole, South Sudan as a country still is not digitally accessible. So for women, it is even more difficult because generally it is difficult, and then for women it's even more difficult. And yet we know that internationally digitalization is now moving the world forward. So if South Sudan as a country is still not accessing internet or the digital world, it means we are really still being backwards, and it is really more for women. Women face several layers of difficulties. First of all, we know that the literacy rate of women in South Sudan is really, really low. So if you're not literal, it is difficult for you also to begin to go on a computer. I went on a computer when I was doing my master's. Even I was forced to because I was afraid of it. It was something difficult. Then I was told, if you don't type your essays, nobody will mark it. So I had to learn it. So look at my people at home, the women who have not gone to school, not even typed on a typewriter, how would they go on the computer? And now we also know that the digital world is a scary world. So for the women in South Sudan, we are saying we are happy that the younger women have taken the way forward. The younger women have gone into advancing themselves into the digital world. This is because most of the younger women are women who are coming from the refugee background. They have gone to countries and studied outside. So those countries are a bit advanced, and in those countries, you have to go digital in order to progress. But those who are still studying in South Sudan, they are struggling because most universities do not have computer access or even internet. Even if they have computer access, they don't have internet access in South Sudan. Internet is a very expensive tool to use in South Sudan because it is not governmental and it is not free. The providers are all the private companies, and they are there just to make money. So you find that even for me as a member of parliament, sometimes I struggle to get the internet access. And it is too expensive, or the area where I are, the Wi-Fi do not reach. So definitely, we said while digitalization is promoting the world and also promoting women coming into the world, we saw it in the SDG 5, we saw it in the Beijing World Recommendation. But in South Sudan, we are still struggling. So the women need to increase their capacity in access, transfer, and application of ICT. There are very few centers that help women who are not either working or who are in the other world to get into this. So digital technologies play a significant role in increasing women's participation in society by creating online space for peace building, but not only for peace building, we also get connected through this digital space, but it also allows you to learn and know more what is going on in the world, because you Google, you see, you know more than you hear from your colleagues. As South Sudan continues to implement the reforms provided by the revitalized peace agreement on the resolution of conflicts in South Sudan, the growing digital divide and online violence, especially against women leaders, I must say, should be really prioritized. Women leaders at the moment are afraid of using the internet. Because the moment you create a Facebook or you go, what do they call it, linked or what, then you'll find flows of insults into your Facebook. So we are kind of scared of using it. So we need to see how can this digital abuse be controlled. Although 35% affirmative action in the transition calls to ensure and the protection of women and girls, it's very difficult to protect women and girls through the internet. I know the government of South Sudan through the ministry or the Minister of Communication who says we are going to be monitoring. It's very difficult to monitor when the provision is not governmental. The provision is private. It's very difficult to monitor. So the abuse will still be there and the abuse is still continuing. The engagement of local women is even more important. We are now talking of digitalization. We are talking of women who are educated, and this is just a small percentage of urban women. What about this bulk of rural women? How are we going to enhance their capacity so that they are able to get into the digital world and also get able to grow? This is very difficult. But I would say also we have women-led organizations in South Sudan who are at the moment trying their best, like if organization has opened a center in Juba where women can come and access internet for a certain period of time. And they also train the women on the use of computer. But this is just a drop in the ocean. We are talking of the population, 60% of 12 million people. So how are we going to have this population get into the digital world? South Sudan needs your help. South Sudan needs the international community, the UN Women, the UNDP, to help open more centers where women can go and learn computer, where women can go and access free internet, where women can and go and exchange with the world. Without that center, we are still talking about women who are still in the darkness, and they will remain in the darkness for a very long, long time. Secondly, we want to say that as technology moves and the world talks of technology, please help us to move with them. Help the women of South Sudan to move with the technology. So equality, as we are saying, equality in decision-making, inequality in the use of everything, it cannot happen in South Sudan so quickly because we have so many things that are pulling the women backwards. And the government of South Sudan is committed to achieving gender equality because they are always now talking about the 35% and achieving it. The promotion of women's rights and their protection in the digital sphere, particularly in the times of transition and conflict resolution, is very important, and the government is talking about that. And through the Ministry of Gender, and the minister is here, the Ministry of Gender is also doing its best to work with the women so that some of the things can be achieved. And I would like to take this opportunity to applaud the efforts of the various technical and financial partners who support invaluable achieving our goals, especially even GNWP, who is helping South Sudanese women through EVE organization. So I want to thank GNWP. I want to thank EVE Organization for Development. I want to thank the UN Women in South Sudan. They are standing with the women. Whenever we ask for support, they are there to support the women. They also give space, although because of the restrictions of accessing the UN offices, it also restricts the women from going there. I want to say thank you so much and thank you for coming to this event.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I have to call you Your Excellency, not Betty, in this setting, for that very impressive and inspiring intervention. Not only good to hear about the government's commitment to the 35%, because we know also the transformative potential of that, but also underlining the dichotomy between making technology accessible and also the risks that go along with that. So I think that's also something we need to bear in mind. So now we're going to turn to our panel. And I'm very pleased. I'm going to keep the bios a little short because of time, but I'm hoping the organizers can also share the full biographical information with the participants here today. So our first panelist is Her Excellency, the Honorable Aya Warile. She's the Minister of Gender and Child and Social Welfare in South Sudan since 2020. She has a very long history of leadership for gender equality and women's empowerment, as well as being a champion on women, peace, and security, including she was recently recognized as the most peaceful woman in South Sudan. So I think that's a very impressive title to have. So there's a question for you, Your Excellency. Considering the fact that South Sudan is at a period of transition, what are some of the initiatives that the ministry has proposed or enacted to counter GBV and disinformation campaigns against women in the digital space?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be in this panel. Thank you, Canada, for hosting us and UN Women. The country, South Sudan is at a critical stage now, where we are preparing for the constitution making process. And we are all aware that a constitution is a prerequisite for elections. So the Ministry of Gender, Child and Social Welfare is preparing. We prepare women and girls for effective participation in the process of constitution making for the upcoming election. A number of initiatives have been made, including the development of the Women Charter. We are at the stage of, we've done consultations, and we are at the stage where we would want to validate the charter at the national level, and later on to disseminate it to the grassroots for women and girls at the grassroots level to bring their voices into the constitution making process. Because this is highlighted in the charter itself. And in line with that, we are also in consultation to develop a youth charter, because we're interested in young women to be involved. So we are in the process of developing a youth charter to make sure that women are also, the young girls, engaged in the constitution making process. The ministry has also developed anti-gender-based violence bill and also women empowerment bill. Those two, there've been a lot of consultations going on, and we are at the stage of now handing it to the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs to be tabled at the Council of Ministers. The anti-GBV bill have been there for a longer time. It has been going to and fro, but we hope that this time around, by handing it officially to the Minister of Justice, it will be tabled in the Council of Ministers. Now, there have been a number of trainings, transformational leadership training to women who are aspiring to be leaders in the future or to take up politics. So this is an ongoing training that we do it together with an institute that is, we partner with support from UN Women. We've been doing that to especially parliamentarians and our leaders, women leaders from the grassroots. We've also, now we've developed our second NAP for 1325 on women, peace and security. Just before we came, we have already validated it. So this is another effort that we are making as a ministry to make sure that our women and girls participate. In the security sector, part of our involvement is in the chapter 2 of the peace agreement. We've formed women in security sector network. That is to strengthen them, but there is also a component of, there's also a focus on GBV. And this is also a requirement that we feel the women in uniform needs to be involved in. Also to make it appealing for young women to join the security sector. We also advocate for community policing, which is very important for us. And we've established a number of special protection units and one-stop center to cater for issues of GBV. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, and very good to hear also about these comprehensive approaches, because I think that some of the challenges that Honorable Aguero raised really require a whole of government approach. So to see the legislation and the action planning and how this will all fit in, I think is a very excellent way of going about this. So the next speaker, I think, is someone that's well known to everyone in this room and needs no introduction, but she is Mavic Cabrera-Balesa, the Executive Director of GNWP. I think we all know the acronym and we all know the incredible woman at the helm of this network. So Mavic, your question is, considering the prevalence of social media and digital technology, what are the opportunities or challenges for women peacebuilders to engage online amongst the compounding crises facing South Sudan at the moment?
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction and for this question. First, I would like to underscore that this is a question where we are making a very big assumption. That is, if South Sudanese women have access to this technology and have the necessary skills to navigate this very difficult space. And I really wish that the Commission on the Status of Women, when they come up with the agreed conclusions from this session, would present practical recommendations on how to address the digital divide and the gender gap within that digital divide. The International Telecommunication Union, for example, has cited that among conflict and crisis-affected countries, the internet access, average internet access for the population is only at 19%. So, assuming that they have access and the access to the technologies and the necessary skills to navigate it safely, there are many benefits. One is sharing and exchanging information, including on their monitoring of the implementation of the RCIS, or the Agreement on the Resolution of Conflict in South Sudan. Second, organizing, building, and strengthening women's networks, civil society networks, and strengthening solidarity among them internally and externally. Number three, it's a use of the technology as an early warning system. For example, threats or of impending intercommunal violence. Fourth, entering advocacy spaces, including those organized in the Security Council, Peacebuilding Commission, or even the General Assembly and other important policy discussion and decision-making spaces, not only at the UN, but in the African Union and other important multilateral institutions. And we've seen this a lot, especially during the height of the COVID pandemic. Fifth, it's also a platform for fundraising, of course, with varying degrees of success or even challenges. And I recall the Honorable Betty Aguero, we supported their fundraising online when, during the communal conflict in her village. But the digital technology is a double-edged sword. There are many opportunities, again, if those conditions of stable access, good bandwidth and skills is available. And available and affordable. So some of the challenges, many of them have been highlighted by our previous speakers. The spread of violent and hateful messages, including especially sexist and misogynist messages and images that only aggravate the sexual and gender-based violence that South Sudanese women and girls are already subjected to. Second is disinformation and misinformation, which not only mislead people, especially those who are needing humanitarian support and protection, but just confused and make the whole immediate environment more more dangerous. Third, it's discrediting women activists, peacebuilders, and we have, for example, actual documentations, particularly those who have been advocating for the implementation of the peace agreement. Another one, another risk that is aggravated because of hateful, violent message and misinformation and disinformation and opportunistic groups using this platform is trafficking of use of the platforms for trafficking women and girls. And then also surveillance, again, of activists, human rights defenders by groups who are threatened by the work of women peacebuilders, activists, and human rights defenders. And one more example is recruitment by rebel groups and extremist groups. So just emphasizing the point on the opportunities as well as the risks and threats that are there in the digital space. And this all the more underline the point of how we need to support access, but also safety and security of women and girls and the population in the use of digital technology.
Thank you so much, Mavik. And I think you've laid out very clear points for the agreed conclusions. So hopefully the member states in the room will be taking note of those and making sure that we use this opportunity of CSW to address some of those issues and this dichotomy that many of the speakers have alluded to between the need to promote access and the need to ensure safety and protection at the same time. So now we're going to turn over to online. We're very lucky to have some excellent, amazing, distinguished colleagues with us online. The first one will be Rita Lopida. She's the co-founder and executive director of EVE Organization for Women in Development and one of the organizers of today's event. So over to you, Eve.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Juba. I am really happy to join this panel discussion that we have taken very long to organize. I remember starting this conversation with Mavik almost a year ago. We've planned to do an event in October, but then it didn't happen. And now we are finally having the event, and I would like to appreciate Canada for providing us with the space, because we know how New York is, and we are really grateful for the support from the Permanent Mission of Canada. I would also like to acknowledge the support from GNWP and UN Women for ensuring that we have a good number of South Sudanese represented in New York during the CSW. Unfortunately, myself and Martha were not able to get to New York, but again, thanks to technology, right? That some of us are privileged to be able to talk to you from South Sudan. And we see how important the digital world is. I would like to highlight a few points. I've heard Mavic speak. I heard the Minister of Gender also raise important points, plus Honorable Betty Oguaro. Honestly, I would just add to what they have already shared. When we look into the context of South Sudan, first of all, for me, it really saddened me because of our situation. First of all, the illiteracy rate among women is one of the highest in the world because of our history of conflict and recurring conflict in the country. And secondly, the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure in South Sudan is really basic. In some of the states, we barely have internet or even network to connect the phones. So when we think about Agenda 2030, I already feel that South Sudan is actually being left behind because of the number of challenges that we face, and particularly women and girls in this country. Sharing my experiences, if organization, the time that COVID-19 hit is when we realized that actually going digital, we have no any other option because there was a time that you're not able to step out, and then how do you connect with people? How do you implement projects? And internet is very expensive, even at the level of Juba. And we have also experienced how donors actually withheld funding because they didn't know how to go about that. And this really impacted on women's organization. The second thing is when we started our incubator program, which is the Young Women Leadership Program, and we have graduates from the university and some secondary school students who apply for the leadership training. But then when we give them tests on the computers, we realized that they were not able to really answer the questions. Some of their documents get lost. And these are people who freshly graduate from the university. Then we realized that it is actually a gap. I think if we didn't start the Young Women Leadership Program, we would have assumed that graduates from the university could actually use the computer. But in our case, most girls, most young women do not have these computer skills. That's why IF organization started the computer course, which is free of charge for young women. And this week, we have just finalized exams for around 90 young women who did the computer course. And we hope to take the second batch in May after graduating this first batch. As Honorable Betty have said, this is actually just a drop in the ocean because the number of applications we receive is actually huge. For the first batch, we received more than 200 applications for the computer course. So demand is there, but people don't have money to go for paid computer courses. So initiatives like this needs to be supported such that we encourage more young women and girls. As we said, the future is female, but if we don't prepare the female for the future, then it's definitely a challenge for us. The second point I want to raise is what we do to encourage women for the use of technology. In all of our trainings, we ensure that we encourage the women that we work with to acquaint themselves with social media and try to also create pages that they can use to improve on their visibility, because there are women at the grassroots who are doing amazing jobs, but their work are not being recognized. It's just because they are not on the social media. So as they say, if you don't have a footprint, it means that you don't exist, you know, on the internet. So we encourage women who are working at the grassroots to ensure that at least they have Facebook or Twitter to share what they do at the grassroots. And also something that we use to encourage women to use computer and improve on their computer skills is that when we do group works in all our meetings, we ask them to do a PowerPoint presentation, just as a way of pushing them to really make use of the computers they have, improve their presentation skill using the computer. But as we mentioned, there is a huge need in South Sudan. So today, as we discuss digitalization, we need to ask the question, women and young women in conflict areas, where are they? Because the digital divide, as we have seen, is quite huge, particularly those who are in conflict context. So I would like to say that we need to call on the government of South Sudan first, just to reiterate, to reduce the taxes on ICT and technological materials to make it accessible, and to reduce the internet prices or the tariff in general. But for the international community and our partners throughout the world, I think it's important that we prioritize computer literacy, we prioritize education of women, we prioritize helping women organizations have institutional capacity that can give space and have access to internet. I think I will leave it at this. And just in conclusion, I would like to say that for those who use the digital space in South Sudan, of course, it's already highlighted that there are a lot of challenges when it comes to cyber crimes, but also the government of South Sudan in 2021 have passed a provisional order to criminalize cyber crimes and abuse and harassment of women online. I think it is a good step forward, but we need to see laws actually in place that will criminalize all the online crimes and abuses. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rita. I think you've given also some very concrete recommendations, as well as shared some of the very concrete actions that EVE organization is taking to address the digital divide. It was alarming to hear about the donors pausing funding and all of the challenges that are being faced in light of COVID. But at the same time, I think it's really positive how you're encouraging your members and partners to put their activities out there in the digital space to really also try to shape the narrative, so that the narrative is shaped by women peacebuilders rather than the other way around. So that was also very exciting. So our last panelist is also joining us online. This is Martha Batim, the representative of the South Sudan Women's Coalition. And Martha, I'd like to ask you, in your experience, what are some of the possibilities and challenges around using social media and technology as a tool for coalition building and information dissemination? Over to you, Martha.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you, EVE organization, and all the partners for making this event happen. Before I go on to answer your question, I'd like to give a brief background of the South Sudan Women Coalition for Peace. So the coalition was formed in 2017, and it brings together women from all over South Sudan, and women also from the neighboring countries and from the diaspora, and also brings together women from all walks of life, including those from different political affiliations, different religious beliefs, those with different socioeconomic status, and also women from refugee camps. The coalition comprises of over 60 women activists and women-led organizations, and they operate both within South Sudan and also within the region. The Women Coalition is also a signatory to the Revitalized Peace Agreement and has several members sitting on the peace implementing mechanisms. Now onto your question, we have witnessed several possibilities when it comes to the use of technology and social media when it comes to coalition building. And one of them has been an increased reach, especially when it comes to engaging women from within the region and those who are in diaspora that might not otherwise have been able to attend meetings and networking events that are organized by the coalition. And also, the other advantage and possibility is that digitalization has enabled the coalition to have real-time communication. And we have seen this as an advantage when it comes to organizing meetings and sharing information and just trying to disseminate even basic documentation of the coalition. We also have known the use of social media and technology to help with costs. It's more cost effective as opposed to organizing live meetings. And we have seen that especially, it doesn't apply to every member of the coalition, but at least for most members, especially those who are out of South Sudan, because we know that even within South Sudan, traveling from one place to another is very expensive because of the lack of broad networks. And also, we have seen that there are a lot of other challenges, including insecurity, that are associated with movements of women. So whenever we're able to have our meetings online, it's really of an advantage to the coalition. We have also seen that being on social media has increased the visibility of the coalition. And this gives the opportunity for the coalition to have a lot of engagement with their members, as well as engaging with potential partners and allies. But when it comes to the challenges, the first two panelists have highlighted most of them, but I'll just highlight them as well. And one of the most difficult aspect of the use of technology and social media is limited access. We know that the literacy rate of women in South Sudan is really low. And also coupled with that, a lot of women in the rural areas do not have access to electricity, they do not have access to technology. And as some of the panelists have already mentioned, the tariffs associated with buying internet connectivity is very, very high. So in a way, this makes the women who are not able to afford these internet costs left out. I mean, it makes them vulnerable when it comes to getting connected with the wider coalition. The other issue is language barrier. We know that most of the social media platforms are predominantly English-based, and we have a huge population of people that have either gone to school and studied in Arabic or do not know how to read or write at all. So this becomes a challenge to engage them as well on the social media platforms. And we have witnessed that as other women, the few who are able to join are mobilizing among themselves, these other women who are not able to engage effectively on social media are left out. The other issue is security and privacy concerns. We know that sometimes, especially for activists who regularly speak on very sensitive issues, they become a target, for example, to security attacks. And this deters women from effectively working within the networks and also effectively carrying out their work as activists. So it also prevents dissemination of information within the coalition members. Lastly, we have the issue of limited skills, for example, among the older women. We know that it is not easy, like Honorable Aguero has said, to learn this technology and social media engagement within a short span of time. And we know that most of this technology have just recently been introduced in South Sudan. So it might require a bit of time to train most of the members and also afford them with the basic equipment that they need in order for them to take a step forward and begin to learn. It's never too late. We just have to give them the opportunity to be able to learn. I think I'll end here. And if there are any questions later, I'll be available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha, for sharing your experience and giving us such clear, I think, direction also on some of the challenges that need to be addressed. The opportunities in terms of being able to communicate with a diverse, we know South Sudan is such an incredibly diverse country with a very large diaspora. So that's such a huge advantage, but that again has to be weighed, as you rightly said, by the risks of leaving people out who are not able to access that technology or don't have the necessary skills. So we actually have another round of questions, but because we're running a little bit behind, I think maybe we can open up to the floor to colleagues who would like to pose questions. And maybe I can emphasize some of the questions that we had for the second round were really about some of the issues that have been discussed already related to how we can use opportunities in technology to bridge the divide between urban and rural, and obviously the ethnic divides, as well as the transnational divides of people who are living in other countries, the diaspora and refugees, et cetera, neighboring countries. So before we turn back to the panelists to reflect on some of those dynamics, let me open the floor to our audience members. If there are any questions or comments, examples or insights you'd like to share, please. I think maybe, do we have a roving mic? Yes.
Testing.
Thank you very much for this interesting topic. I say kudos to my South Sudan sisters who are doing a wonderful job to bring peace in their country and to bridge the digital divide. I'm Omam Jomo Esther, the Executive Director of Reach Out. I come from the English-speaking region of Cameroon, one of the English-speaking regions of Cameroon. And we all know that my country is also rocked with a conflict, which has been devastating life, causing so much pains and sufferings to communities, and especially women and children. We have been trying so much to make things happen. But when I hear your experiences today, and when I follow what Lupidia said and Martha, it makes me reflect on what we have been through and what we've been struggling to do all this while. Today, we are talking about the bridging the digital divide, you know. We want to talk about the power of the grassroots. When we want to have stronger voices and make our advocacy cases to go through, we must remember the women and girls who are at the grassroots. And how do we do to get these new technologies to these women? Knowing very well that we have many remote areas. And I always ask a question to know that with what means do we expect them to carry out their activities, to link to the external world, when we know that internet is not chocolate. It's not easy to get. It comes to it. And we know that those in the rural areas live below the poverty line of $1 a day in our communities. So this has been my worries all this while. But we will not relent. We know that we need to carry out advocacy in order to make government to improve on policies which will reach to those women in those areas, because at times government policies have little or no impact at all in some of these areas. I remember when 7 children were killed, and we wanted to mobilize women to go out. The women in the rural area learned very late and they cried out. Those in the semi-rural areas, we use our phones, we use WhatsApp to pass on the message because we hadn't money to mobilize. We mobilized through WhatsApp. We intended to mobilize 300 women, but because of the power of technology, digital tools, we were able to bring out 4,500 instead of 300. Now you can see the power of new technology. And this is what you are all talking about here today. So we will really go back and see, but I wanted to find out from Lupidia and Martha, what are you doing? What kind of advocacy strategies are you using to make sure that your government provide access to these facilities? Thank you, or utilities. Thank you.
Maybe right here first.
Thank you very much. I also want to echo my colleagues who brought up this issue of the digitization. My name is Mary Alphonse. I'm the Deputy Governor of Eastern Equatorial State. I want to thank all the colleagues for this kind of conversation. I am deeply just concerned, just to reiterate what my previous speaker said, because I live in rural area with those women. I really see, and sometimes you are overwhelmed, what needs to be done. And truly, for us to reach those women, we got to strategize in a different way. It cannot be the same process that, oh, we want to reach them, we want to reach them. We have to strategize in a different way. How? First, I come from areas where there are not even roads. Leave alone the internet. There are mobile phones, fair enough, that is okay, but not everybody is having it. It is good for mobilization. But in the country like South Sudan, women are actually organized in rural areas. It is only that we don't reach them. They are organized in a hairdressing place. When they go for fetching water, when they go for firewood, they go as a group. So how do we actually design something that can actually, before they can go to fetch water, we need to talk about something first. How do we introduce something new? Since we cannot have internet there. So how do we actually reach those already organized women there? They are not disorganized as people want to say, they are organized. But how do we reach them? Of course, I know internet is a new thing, but I remember when it boomed up in 2000, the Western world had a different thinking. And what was that thinking? They have to target the schools so that we bring a digital generation. But now if we are talking about, fair enough, we're talking about reaching everybody. Why don't we also talk about actually empowering students from the primary school to go into the computer life? You know, like when you have school, girls' school, in Torit we have girls' schools. We really want to improve the digitization among women. We have to target the schools that are actually girls' schools so that they are actually become the champions of this digitization. And then the older generation, of course, we have to struggle to give them to find ways in order to, at least so that they can catch up. I know even in the Western world, not everybody catch up with the digital world, but at least it became like, it was a boring thing, but then it started picking up among the old people and all these things, and everybody is now digitized. Mine is just the worry of how do we reach the already organized people and how do we reach the school? Because we have to arrest the problem from the grassroots, from the younger age. That is how you get rid of not being part of digitization. So I want to thank all the people who brought this issue. It is a very serious issue, but I agree with my sister who spoke last is, how do we actually reach those people if there are not even roads? Thank you.
Okay, I see a lot of hands up. Maybe I think you are next. And if colleagues could please, yeah, go ahead. And then you. But if you could please keep your intervention short. So we only have 15 minutes left and we need to turn back to the panel for their feedback as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I am Sarah Duval. I am Executive Director of Hope of Africa, HOFA Cameroon. And I think I just want to do maybe a recommendation. If there's one thing that the Cameroon government has done good, one thing is trying to bring internet to the people. And I think that the South Sudan government, since we have government officials here, should also try to subsidize those things. Because if not, no matter how much we talk, the grassroots woman will still not be able to have access to it. Now, they should also look at their school curriculum. It should be added in their school curriculum. ICT should be a must in the school curriculum. There's something about dreaming. In the far-fetched areas in Cameroon where they don't even have electricity, but they teach them ICT, the child would draw the computer. So the child knows that there is something called the computer. It exists. And in growing, they want to know more about it. So I think that is what, as members of the government seated here, I think Her Excellency said, if it wasn't a condition for her work to be read, that she had to type, she wouldn't have used the computer. So sometimes it is right. The capacities of women and young girls also have to be built because they can still have the access, but they don't have the capacity to use what is accessible to them. So I think that as a recommendation, those are bills that should be passed in your parliament. And that will be helpful to the community. Thank you.
There, and there. We have 5 more. And I don't know that we're turning to anyone online for their questions either, but if you could just be very short, thank you.
I will be very short, but I need translation from French because my English is not good. Is it possible? Merci beaucoup. Merci. Alors, je m'appelle Mounia Chadi et je suis du Québec, Canada. Je représente le Comité québécois Femmes et Développement, le CQFD, qui est une entité de l'organisation internationale des associations de coopération au Québec. la COSI, qui regroupe 70 organismes de coopération internationale.
Madame represents a cooperative movement in Quebec, and she represents a number of groups of women in the province of Quebec in Canada. And this is her question.
Alors, la première chose que je voudrais dire, c'est que le français est absent de la CSW 67. À part les activités officielles à l'intérieur de l'enceinte des Nations Unies, où il y a la traduction pour multiples langues, dans le forum des ONG, j'ai vu plusieurs activités où on traduisait de l'anglais vers l'espagnol, mais le français, il n'y a personne qui s'y intéresse. Et je trouve ça très dommage parce que rien que notre organisation, elle regroupe 70 organismes internationaux qui sont en coopération avec des centaines d'ONG francophones à travers le monde et tout ce monde-là est absolument exclu du forum des ONG à cause du problème linguistique et de l'absence de traduction. Je trouve ça très, très dommage.
Madame is complaining about the fact that French is not widely used in the CSW informal meetings, which she thinks is really too bad because it means that a lot of people who are speaking French around the world are being excluded. And perhaps you could ask a question.
Alors là, je vais aller vers ma question. Je suis du Québec et du Canada, mais je suis d'origine marocaine, donc je suis africaine comme mes camarades soudanaises. Et j'ai une question pour les ONG soudanaises qui sont avec nous aujourd'hui. C'est vraiment très bien que nous fassions un plaidoyer pour un meilleur accès des filles et des femmes à l'usage de la technologie numérique. Mais je voudrais aussi savoir ce que vous pensez de l'importance de faire un plaidoyer pour que les infrastructures de la technologie numérique, je veux dire par là les data centers qui stockent les données numériques et les câbles sous-marins qui véhiculent les données numériques. Ces investissements-là dans les infrastructures du numérique, les pays du Sud sont absolument absents. Nous ne sommes que des consommateurs de la technologie du Nord. Est-ce que nous ne devrions pas, en Afrique et dans les pays du Sud, faire aussi un plaidoyer pour que nos États investissent et qu'on ne soit pas réduit à de simples consommateurs de la technologie numérique? Merci.
Madame makes a point that she thinks it's very important. First of all, she wants to stress personally that she's from Quebec, but she's also an immigrant from Morocco to Quebec. And so as a Moroccan, she's speaking as a fellow African. She feels very strongly that instead of just being consumers of technology and consumers of the infrastructure, it's very important that that Africa and African countries think more and do more to become producers, to become the centers of the production of the infrastructure that's building the methods of communication and the internet. I hope I've translated as well as I can the gist of what you've said. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more.
Pardon
Oh
me.
gosh, so many now. We only have 10 minutes left. Okay, right here in the front. And if you could keep your intervention to like 30 seconds, ask a question. I think there'll be time for mingling afterwards. So if you could just ask your question, then we can hopefully hear everyone's voice.
Okay, thank you. My name is Clotilda Andensa. I'm from Cameroon, like my colleagues, and I am coordinator at the Center for Advocacy in Gender Equality and Action for Development. And I'm also the regional coordinator for the Southwest Northwest Women's Task Force. And that's why we're addressing one of my questions to the lady who spoke about the network of, or the coalition of women in South Sudan. My first question is, she said, their constitution, the way they are made up in the group, they also have women from neighboring countries. I would like to find out from her the reason for including women from neighboring countries and what advantage that has, because we also have a coalition and we may take advantage of that. Then the second question I want to ask is to Rita. Rita, as women peace builders, we are facing a lot of challenges, backlash from the internet, threats and all the like. What strategies have you put in place so far to have come this far with the work that you do and you are succeeding? And the third question goes to still the lady who talked about the coalition. I think I got something like you are part of the signatory to the peace agreement. Coming from a country where we are struggling to get to that level where women can be actively sitting on the table and taking the decisions, what strategies did you take to get to this level where you actually got to sitting on the table and to the level of signing the agreement? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And maybe you can just pass, we have some of our sisters here from South Sudan that want to speak right here. And please keep it brief so we can hear from others.
I'm Jane Kide. I'm from South Sudan. I just want to add into what the Honorable Minister has already said. As we are preparing for the constitution making process and also the election, and also taking into consideration the population of women at the grassroots level, which we have a larger part of it in the rural areas. So our point here is, as we are trying to build the capacities of these women to have that confidence to participate in all the process, because it is important for women to participate in the constitution making process, to bring the issues that women want to see in this country. South Sudan has been passing in a lot of difficulties, especially women, and it has been said in the remarks, issues of gender-based violence, issues of education, issues of maternal health, a lot. Now, preparing these women to have solidarity among themselves and taking into consideration the digital world, it is very difficult. So we have that big challenge to bring those women together, to have solidarity. When they reach to election, they also need to come together so that they see that their women goes beyond to that level of participation. We want to see that the civil society organizations who are working together with the government to be supported so that they can reach the grassroots people with education, with knowledge, and we can use the local technology like community radios. We can use them to mobilize the women. We can use those spaces where the women come together. We can record some of the things and give it to them. You know, we get different ways how to reach them and bring the ideas together. Now with the Women Charter, if they are not aware, once it comes for this consultation, they may not be able to say what the women want, because having those issues that the women have raised, they have around 11 points to be included in the constitution process. So if they don't understand it, they don't know it, it will be very difficult for them to participate. And that will not bring, I really urge our communities that we need to support the civil society organizations. We need to support the government, especially the institutions that are making sure that policies and strategies are in place to see that women are at that level. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry, but I don't think we have time for any more comments from the floor. We have only a couple more minutes. So I'd like to turn back to, let's start from the colleague who went last. So Martha, can you please give just a 30-second response to some of the questions raised, noting that we don't have time to get into detail, but if you'd like to just share a thought or two. Go ahead, Martha.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So I think I'll start with the last question. The participant asked about some of the strategies that the South Sudanese women use to get involved in the peace process. And I'd like to proudly say that actually the representative of the Women Coalition, and the signatory representing the coalition was Rita, and she's right here. She might be able to say a thing or two about that. And also about the issue of the women from the neighboring countries. I'm so sorry if I wasn't clear. It's not women from those particular countries. It's displaced women living in those neighboring countries, women from South Sudan. So they're part of the coalition. The South Sudanese are part of the coalition, but living in these different countries. And finally, on the question of what the coalition has done in terms of engaging the government when it comes to helping with digitalization, the coalition has put in place a number of policy recommendations, including the reduction of tariffs by the government, because a lot of the costs come from the telecommunications companies, which are private, but are still under the control of the government, of course. So if they could subsidize some of those costs, then the burden would be lighter on the common citizen. Finally, my recommendation, as somebody who's enthusiastic about education for both young and old, I would like to request the development partners to work with the government, especially those in the educational sector, to start introducing digital programs, even from preschool. And the excuse might be lack of technology and lack of electricity, all those challenges that we've discussed. But at the rural level, I know of other cases in others where technologies like solar systems have been used, for example, and mobile devices to introduce the kids at the primary school level to technology. And I think when we start from there and continue
Thank you,
to work with
Martha.
civil society-
Can you wrap up? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, it seems like we also need a study exchange between South Sudan and Cameroon, so we can talk to our offices about that. And Rita, over to you. If you can just give us 20 seconds, please.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I want to recognize the presence of my sisters from the English-speaking Cameroon. Just to let you know that we are with you in the struggle. I've spoken with a number of your colleagues and spoken at your conferences, and I look forward to engaging you more when it comes to issues of women peace builders. But I want to respond to one thing very quickly. This is the power of the grassroots. And in the context of South Sudan, it has already been highlighted that we have key things that will happen in the near future, the constitution-making process, as well as possibly elections. These are crucial things that will happen, and it needs the mobilization and the engagement of the grassroots. So how do we do that? Is that we need to continue engaging, have a short-term programs or solutions and long-term solutions. And I've had already Martha and the rest talk about education, looking into the curriculum. These are all long-term intervention. But we cannot wait for the long term if we have key things happening in the next 2 years. So one of the things that we use as EAF organization, as well as for the South Sudan Women Coalition, is to engage our members and encourage them to use the digital platforms, particularly the social media, the Zoom and Teams and the rest. So now for our monthly meetings, we actually have women joining in from the refugee camps. What we encourage them is that from the activities we do, their DSA, we encourage them to buy smartphones, and then they have their sons and daughters who knows how to use the smartphone. So they help them, and in our last meeting, we actually had a session on how to use Zoom through your phone. So now we have women who are illiterate, but they join the meetings from the refugee camps. So I think in a short term, we need to use whatever we have. Help the women have the smartphones and help somebody in their neighborhood help them join the meeting online. And also as projects, we need to always have a budget line for internet. And this would go, if we have meetings, we need to sign bundles to our partners to be able to join online meeting. Just like we organize workshops and we organize per diem, I think it should become mandatory that if we are doing online events, then the per diem should be airtime and internet bundles for women. I think this is a one-time solution that we can use. But I really call forward for continuous engagement on issues of women digitalization, particularly women in conflict and post-conflict situation. Thank you very much, Sarah. And I would like to thank the Ministry of Gender for really working closely with women organizations and working together on issues of women, peace and security, as well as now the issue of digitalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. And I always say that conflict prevention and peace building begin at home, but obviously so does addressing the digital divide and the intergenerational divide. So that was a very good suggestion. Mavic, final thought.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I would like to reinforce the point of one of our colleagues that women should not only be consumers of the technology. And beginning from our demand to for women and girls' right to education, we should extend that to encourage and support women and girls to go into computer science or computer technology and support them to become computer engineers, leaders of research and development in information and communication technologies, and get them to decision-making positions of telecommunication companies. And that leads me to my next point. While we demand accountability from governments, we should also be demanding accountability from telecommunication companies. For example, the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders aligned itself with a campaign called Stop Hate for Profit campaign. And this is targeted to companies like Facebook. And it was documented that between 2019 and 2020, Facebook revenue on selling ad space alone to political parties and other groups was $70 billion. That's their profit for allowing their space to be used for hate and violent campaigns of political parties and extremist groups. So we need to be aware of that. Many of us are Facebook users. Maybe we're not even aware of that. And then last point, in partnership with Eve and also led by our board members, Honorable Berry Aguaro, we've been capacity building South Sudanese refugee women in northern Uganda. And you know, you're very concerned about, you're equally, if not much more concerned about them, that they should not be left behind from all of our efforts for empowerment and demanding their participation in peace processes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mavic. Honorable Minister, last thought to you, and then we have our closing remarks.
Thank you. I just have two things that I would like to talk about. And this is an opportunity for us South Sudanese. One is that the National Communication Authority has this program called Connecting South Sudan. And they are really advocating for policies on exclusion of taxes on telecommunication. I think that's an opportunity that all of us can also use so that we can reach out to women, the grassroots. The second one is by the Ministry of Education on rolling adult learning. This has come out in all our conversations that one of the issues we have is the high level of illiteracy. And I think we can use that to make sure that our women know how to use these devices. Otherwise, I'm very grateful, and this is an opportunity and it's an eye opener. And I think as a Ministry of Gender, Child and Social Welfare, we're going to take lead in that to make sure that next year by this time we would have made a difference with all the support of our partners and our friends from South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for our amazing panelists. So now we have our closing remarks. Thank you all for your patience and for staying for this very important conversation. A lot to say and continue to be said. And let me take this opportunity to thank all the organizers and all of the partners here today. So our closing remarks are from the Honorable Mary Lou McPhedran, who I think many of you know is a well-known, longstanding champion of women, peace and security, and also her day job, an independent senator from Manitoba, Canada. So over to you, Senator. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps of South Sudan and Canada, and all our distinguished participants today. I want to thank you, Ambassador Ray, and your team here at the Canadian Mission for your hospitality. Sarah, thank you for your very skilled moderation. And on behalf of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders, our deepest thanks to our partners, the EVE Organization for Women Development, Leaders for Peace Project, and the South Sudan Women's Caucus for their work and leadership in promoting the Women, Peace and Security agenda during the transition period of South Sudan's governance, and through their work promoting women's equality and safety in the digital sphere. First as a human rights educator and now as a parliamentarian, I've spent many years working with South Sudanese women leaders in the diaspora in my home province of Manitoba, Canada. 12 years ago, the Manitoba Women for Women of South Sudan organization was created by feminist allies and the Institute for International Women's Rights at Global College, along with the leaders of the diaspora. Canada's first national action plan on women, peace, and security was crafted over 8 years ago, before our feminist international development policy was adopted. But in Canada, civil society, the Women, Peace and Security Network Canada, noted then the importance of including diaspora women in the NAP development and in the implementation strategy of the National Action Plan. We have heard here how the digital gender divide exacerbates political, economic, and social exclusion of women and girls and adds bricks to the barriers against women who want to participate politically. Closing this divide must be included in national action plans. Specific strategies for countering digital violence against women in public life need to be included. And it's very good to hear from Minister Wareel the initiative of the Government of South Sudan. And so, if I may, in closing, just acknowledge the members of the board of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders able to be here today with, of course, Honorable Betty Aguero, and also Dr. Rima Saleh, the Honorable Stephen Gauja, Dr. Rima Saleh from Jordan, Palestine, the Honorable Stephen Gauja from Sierra Leone, and Dr. Yasmin Nario Galas from the Philippines. To GNWP, to EVE, to all who have participated here today, kudos to you and to you, our audience, for making time. In the Senate of Canada, I serve with a number of Indigenous senators, and one of them, Senator Mary Jane McCollum, explained to me the term chi miigwech. Chi miigwech. It's a way of saying thank you. But it goes beyond that in the Cree language of Canada. It goes beyond that because it means thank you and we will move forward together. And that is how I would like to say chi miigwech to all today.